A parrot spoke in French, and those words carried the weight of secrets that could break nations. What seemed like a random sound from a bird soon became the doorway to a hidden truth. Before we move deeper into this shocking story, subscribe now so you never miss the powerful journeys we reveal here. Because what you are about to hear is not just a tale of coincidence, but of destiny, betrayal, and the courage of one man who dared to listen when others ignored. It began in a small village, where children played under the burning sun, and women carried water jars on their heads. Life seemed ordinary, yet the parrot perched on a branch was no ordinary creature. Every afternoon it repeated strange French sentences, not the casual words of travelers, but structured codes, fragments of military commands, and whispers that did not belong to the air of Burkina Faso. The villagers laughed at first, thinking the bird had copied soldiers from a nearby base. But the repetition grew darker. Words like operation, shadow, and target slipped out of its beak, making even the children pause in fear. Who had taught the parrot these sentences? When news of the strange bird reached Captain Ibrahim Traoré, he did not laugh. Unlike others, he had seen enough shadows of foreign control and strange incidents in his homeland. He knew that in a land where freedom was always under watch, even a bird's voice could carry dangerous meaning. Traoré decided to listen carefully, writing down the parrot's phrases one by one. To outsiders it looked absurd, a soldier paying attention to a bird. But he trusted his instincts, and those instincts would soon uncover a plot larger than anyone expected. One night, as the moonlight covered the quiet land, Traoré sat alone with his notes. He compared the parrot's words with old intercepted radio transmissions. The similarity was undeniable. The bird was not speaking random French. It was repeating coded lines used by foreign agents. His heart raced. This was not coincidence. This was a leak. But how could such a leak reach a parrot in a village where no one understood the true meaning? Doubt circled his mind, yet the pattern was too sharp to ignore. He wondered, had spies hidden near the village? Had conversations been overheard by the bird, who then became an unwilling messenger? Or was it something stranger, something that destiny itself had chosen to reveal through this unexpected creature? The next morning, Traoré walked into the village with a calm face, but inside he was burning with questions. He asked the villagers when the bird first began to speak. Some said weeks ago, others said months. But one old man whispered something that shook him. He claimed the parrot had started its strange speech right after a group of unfamiliar foreigners visited the village, giving sweets to children and pretending to be kind. That moment, Traoré felt the story had only just begun. The old man's trembling voice echoed in Traoré's mind long after he left the village square. Foreigners handing out sweets was a familiar trick, a silent mask often worn before something darker unfolded. He kept replaying the parrot's strange sentences in his head, connecting them to the sudden appearance of outsiders. The bird had repeated them too often, too clearly, for this to be an accident. Somewhere, hidden beneath the surface of this ordinary village, there was a network feeding information into the heart of foreign powers. That night, Traoré did not rest. He walked alone across the dusty paths, listening to the sound of distant drums and the occasional cry of an owl. In his hands were the pages filled with the parrot's words, each line heavy with meaning. Operation Delta, move at dawn, eliminate contact. These were not words a bird should know. His mind sharpened, suspicion growing stronger with each breath. Could it be that French intelligence was using the village as a silent station, disguising their meetings as casual visits? As dawn broke, Traoré returned to the parrot. He stood quietly beneath the tree, waiting. The bird tilted its head, watching him with eyes too sharp for comfort. Then, as if on command, the parrot repeated another phrase in crisp French. This time it mentioned a location, a river crossing, and a date only a few days away. Traoré's blood turned cold. If the parrot was correct, something was planned, and it was imminent. He had no time to waste. He gathered a small circle of trusted men who had seen the weight of betrayal in their own soil. Without revealing everything, he explained enough to make them alert. They would need to search, to observe, and to follow any stranger who moved too freely near the river. But as they prepared, another thought pierced his mind. Was a parrot itself being used as bait? Could this all be a carefully crafted trap to mislead him? Hours later, as the sun stretched high, a child ran into the village shouting that men in foreign uniforms were seen near the forest edge. Traoré's men rushed to investigate. The forest was silent, too silent. Then they found it. Footprints in the mud, cigarette butts, and traces of food left behind. Someone had camped there, someone careful enough to hide, but careless enough to leave a trail. The pieces were falling together. That evening, the parrot once again spoke. But this time its voice cracked, as of force, and the words it repeated were not just command but warnings. Danger, silence, watch him. The bird's tone felt urgent, almost human. The villagers stood frozen, their laughter gone, fear spreading like fire. Traoré's eyes narrowed. Was this voice still a reflection of spies nearby, or had the bird become a tool of those who wished to trap him? As night swallowed the village, one truth grew heavier. The parrot had become more than a creature. It was a witness, a mirror, and perhaps a messenger betrayal waiting to explode. Dark clouds gathered above the village that night, covering the moon and drowning the land in shadows. The air felt heavy, as though the earth itself carried a secret. Traoré sat near a flickering lantern, his notes spread across the wooden table. Each phrase from the parrot replayed in his mind like a puzzle missing its last piece. The bird's latest warning, "Watch him," struck him more than the rest. Who was him? Was it a spy hidden among the villagers, or someone closer than he wanted to believe? He closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the foreigners who had visited, smiling as they handed sweets to children. Spies often wore friendly faces. Yet the bird repeated those coded sentences with such clarity that Traoré wondered if the villagers themselves had heard too much. Perhaps someone had been listening alongside the parrot, silently feeding information to outsiders. The thought tightened his chest. Betrayal often grew from within, and history had shown him how dangerous that truth could be. The next morning he called the elders of the village. Their weathered faces revealed years of struggle, men who had lived through both freedom and occupation. Traoré spoke slowly, carefully, describing the danger without exposing the full truth. He told them the parrot had heard things that should never have been spoken in their land. The elders exchanged worried glances. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes, finally admitted something others kept hidden. She said a young man in the village had been meeting strangers at night, always near the river. He returned with money, food, and promises he never explained. The silence that followed was crushing. Could this be the him the parrot warned about? Traoré's fist tightened under the table, but his face remained calm. He thanked the woman and asked no further questions. Too many ears were listening. If the young man was indeed tied to spies, exposing him without proof could spark chaos. That evening Traoré followed the trail himself. He moved quietly through the tall grass, his eyes sharp, his breath steady. Near the riverbank he saw him, thin, restless, holding a small satchel. Minutes later, two figures approached from the shadows. They spoke softly in French, unaware they were being watched. Traoré's heart pounded as he recognized the phrases, the very same ones the parrot had repeated. Every doubt vanished. The bird had not been imagining, it had been echoing. Traoré remained hidden, memorizing every detail. The strangers handed the young man a paper envelope and vanished into the dark. The boy tucked it into his satchel and walked back towards the village, unaware that every step was being tracked. Back in his small quarters, Traoré stared at the silent parrot. The bird tilted its head again, almost knowingly, before whispering another phrase into the quiet room. "Time is near." The words froze him. The message was no longer about a single spy. Something much larger was coming, and he had only days to prepare. The night carried a silence that was too sharp to ignore. Traoré sat by the window of his small room, the envelope he had taken from the young man lying unopened on the table. His fingers hesitated, his mind racing. Inside that thin paper could be the key to uncovering an entire web of betrayal, or it could be a trap planted to destroy him. Yet the parrot's last words, "Time is near," echoed in his ears, pushing him to act. With steady hands, he broke the seal. Inside were pages filled with numbers, symbols, and broken French sentences. To an untrained eye it looked like nonsense, but to Traoré, who had studied military codes, it was a pattern. The letters formed coordinates, pointing toward a location not far from the village. His chest tightened. It was a supply route, a hidden path where weapons or information could be moved without detection. If this was true, then his land was not just under observation, it was being prepared for something far more dangerous. The next morning, he gathered his most trusted men again. He showed them only parts of the document, keeping the most sensitive lines hidden. They would scout the coordinates in silence without drawing any suspicion. But as they prepared, another problem gnawed at him. The young man who received the envelope was still inside the village, walking freely, smiling as though nothing had happened. Should he be confronted now, or should his betrayal remain a secret until the full truth was revealed? That evening, the scouting party returned with unsettling news. They had found footprints near the coordinates, as well as crates hidden beneath leaves and branches. Inside the crates were small devices, radios, wires, and strange equipment not made in their land. Foreign hands had placed them there. It was proof beyond doubt, but it raised an even greater question. What were these devices meant for? Communication, explosions, or something else? When Traoré heard this, he felt the ground shift beneath him. The Parrot had not only repeated words, but had become the unlikely witness to a foreign operation. The weight of that reality was almost unbearable. How could a bird hold the key to saving a nation? Was this a miracle, or was it a cruel trick of fate? Late at night, as the oil lamp burned low, he heard the Parrot again. Its voice was softer this time, almost broken. 3 days, river, fire. The words fell like stones inside his chest. 3 days until what? A meeting, an attack, or a signal to burn everything down. He could not sleep. Every sound outside felt like a warning. Every shadow looked like a spy. Traoré knew he had to act before the 3 days ended. He could no longer watch silently. The betrayal was clear. The plan was moving fast, and his choices would decide whether his land fell into deeper chains or rose to fight back. The countdown of 3 days weighed on Traoré like chains he could not break. Each passing hour echoed louder, pressing him to decide quickly and wisely. He stood at the edge of the village one morning, watching the children play, their laughter filling the air. None of them knew the danger crawling closer. None of them knew that foreign hands had already planted seeds of destruction within their soil. Traoré clenched his fists. He had sworn to protect them, and this time failure would not be forgiven by history. The young man, whose betrayal now seemed undeniable, moved about the village as though untouched by guilt. He greeted elders, carried water, and spoke of nothing unusual. Yet Traoré noticed every detail. The nervous glance, the sudden silence when asked questions, the way his hand shook slightly whenever someone mentioned the river. Traoré said nothing, choosing instead to watch. Silence, he believed, was a sharper weapon than confrontation. As the second day drew near, Traoré ordered his men to guard the hidden coordinates discovered earlier. They lay in wait, concealed among trees and shadows, watching for movement. Hours passed without a sound, until just before midnight a faint glow appeared along the river path. Figures moved silently, carrying crates and whispering in French. The men counted at least 5 strangers, their faces covered, their steps confident. It was no longer a rumor. The spy network was real, and it was already breathing within the land. When word reached Tra, his pulse thundered. The Parrot's warning had been exact. But the message river, fire, still haunted him. Did fire mean an attack, or was it something hidden inside those crates? He could not wait any longer. He chose to intercept. The next evening, he gathered his men in secret. Their eyes burned with determination, yet fear lingered. They were brave, but they knew the cost of facing a foreign-backed operation. Traoré spoke with a steady voice, promising that truth was their shield and courage their only weapon. He told them that silence had fed chains for too long, and that now was the time to break them. Under the cover of night, they moved. The forest swallowed their steps as they followed the same path toward the river. The air grew heavier with each stride, until they saw them, the strangers unloading crates, the young man standing among them, his face pale under the moonlight. Traoré's chest tightened. Betrayal had a face now, and it belonged to someone who once called this land his own. He raised his hand, signaling his men to wait. For a moment, the world stood still. The Parrot's voice rang in his mind again. 3 days, river, fire. And then, as if fate wanted the prophecy to unfold, one of the strangers opened a crate. Inside lay sticks of explosives, wires coiled tightly, and a timer that blinked red in the darkness. The fire was not a metaphor. It was a plan to burn the future of his people. The sight of the explosives froze every breath in Traorés' chest. The blinking light on the timer was proof that the enemy's plan was already alive, ticking closer with each second. His men looked at him, waiting for a command. Fear filled their eyes, but so did loyalty. He inhaled slowly, steadying himself. This was the moment where hesitation could mean the end of his people. Traoré gave a signal, and his men moved like shadows, surrounding the strangers in silence. For a heartbeat the night remained calm, then chaos exploded. Shouts in French clashed with a heavy thud of rifles striking the ground. The traitorous young man tried to escape, but Traoré caught him by the arm, his face burning with anger. "Why?" he demanded, but no answer came, only silence and shame. The fight ended quickly. The strangers were overpowered, their weapons seized, and the crates of explosives dragged away from the riverbank. Yet victory did not feel complete. Traoré stared at the young man, whose betrayal had nearly delivered the village into foreign hands. His voice broke as he asked again, "Why betray the soil that gave you life?" The young man finally whispered that promises of money and freedom had blinded him, promises whispered by foreign agents who claimed they would bring progress. But progress built on chains was nothing but slavery in disguise. As dawn broke, Traoré gathered the villagers. He did not reveal every detail, for the truth was too heavy, but he told them enough. He spoke of betrayal, of hidden plots, and of the courage required to stand against forces that smiled with one face and destroyed with another. The parrot sat above on a branch, silent now, as though its duty was done. The people listened, their eyes wide with shock and fear. When Traoré held up the intercepted documents and the captured explosives, silence fell upon the crowd. They realized that their laughter at the strange bird had masked a danger that could have swallowed them whole. Gratitude mixed with unease, for they knew the fight was not over. That night, as the village rested, Traoré sat alone beneath the stars. He looked at the parrot perched above him. For a long time, the bird said nothing. Then, softly, it whispered one last phrase, "Truth will rise." The word sent a shiver down his spine. Was the parrot simply echoing the voice it had once heard, or had it become a vessel for something greater, something beyond human understanding? He would never know for certain. But what he did know was this. The bird's strange sentences had saved lives, and its warnings had revealed what men tried to hide. Coincidence or miracle, it had played its part in protecting the land. Traoré rose to his feet, his heart firm. The battle against foreign shadows would continue, but he carried a new strength now. For even in the smallest, strangest voices, truth had found a way to speak.